everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Zach on Film. Joining us like always, Steven Schleicher.
What a waste of a perfectly good white boy.
Hey, and long time no see, Matthew Peterson.
Hey, I was wondering if you'd mind if I took out Beth.
Hey, I do mind. So this week, we're jumping past 1969. We're done with that decade.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yeah, the decade of 1969. I know we watched a lot of movies from that era, Zach. I know it feels like a decade, but it was only, in reality, 1 year.
And it felt like a long time, especially Once Upon a Time in the West felt like, I think, that was an entire decade to watch it.
Right, that movie is actually 6.5 years long.
Yeah, it was actually quite incredible how much time it took. There was like a weird time paradox in between shows. It was amazing. But now we're in the 80s, a decade of great films, and we are watching a film by the director, which is just the best name, Savage Steve Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It sounds like you don't see many directors with nicknames, or I guess I shouldn't presume his Savage is a nickname. It, I guess, could be his first name, but I'm just guessing no one is actually named Savage. But he did Better Off
Fred
Dead.
Savage.
For a first name.
Doc Savage.
Doctor is his first name.
Clark is his first name.
Doc Clark.
So Savage Steve Holland, this is his movie.
Mm-hmm.
Better Off Dead from 1985.
Right.
A film I had never heard of until Steven's like, hey, we're gonna do this power combo of like teenage 80s movies. I'm like, all right, cool, man.
I cannot believe you've never heard of this movie.
Well, I mean,
$2 has gone down.
Yeah.
In the lexicon of pop culture of just a common quote. Phrase.
First off, I'll say that's not even the best line from the movie.
No, it's not.
But second off,
waste of a perfectly good white boy is the best line in the whole movie.
Actually, I think
goes that way real fast. Is the best line.
The one G whatever your face is. I'm sorry,
Gee, Ricky, I'm sorry your mom blew up.
I straight up died so much. That was
that is the best line.
Because it's just like explosion driving the car. Gee, Ricky, I'm sorry your mom blew up.
Real sorry your mom blew up.
So flat.
So this is cool because this is the first time you've ever seen this movie.
Okay.
Now,
right.
Unfortunately, we should probably lead up a little bit into the story.
Right.
You only got to see this in SD instead of the Blu-ray or the theatrical.
Right.
movie.
And so here's a reason, and we're gonna get to this later because I'm gonna fix this problem somehow.
Okay.
This movie is not readily available in the year of 2016.
It's not available on Hulu, Netflix, iTunes, which I just figured is like, oh, duh, it should just be available.
Everything should be there, right?
Yeah.
Not on Amazon for streaming. We're all talking about streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Not Amazon, not iTunes, not Netflix, not Hulu, not, I don't know, Vudu or whatever that weird thing Walmart does. It's not anywhere, right? This movie is not accessible. You have to buy it in,
VHS.
I mean, see, VHS. Like, I just found you can actually get a Blu-ray.
Yeah,
on
I got the
Amazon.
Blu-ray. That's the one that I had, but I wasn't for sure that I had it because I was like,
right.
Well, I know I've got it, but
yeah. So I mean, I'm probably procrastinating a little bit. I'm like, hey, Steven, I cannot find this movie.
Okay,
online
so
at all.
let's procrastinate a little bit. It is Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm in Hutchinson, Kansas, where I am in the middle of my son's soccer tournament. He's playing 3 games in a single day. So we're kind of preoccupied with that. And Zach's like, hey, man, I can't find this movie anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, well, we'll figure something out. And then I was like, you know what? We drove by a Hastings on the way to the soccer field, and I know it's closing. And I know Better Off Dead is a movie that you're going to be able to find in any video rental store or place that sells movies, like a Hastings.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? They are going out of business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bet I can walk in there and within 10 minutes find that movie. And I said, hold tight. Because originally you were going to come over to my house and buy it or borrow it. Yeah. And then I was like, well, maybe I don't have it because I just have that movie memorized.
Right.
So in between games, we rushed over to the Hastings, walked in, 10 minutes, found it. I mean, it was literally, they've got all their DVDs lined up for their big going out of business sale. And I go down the Blu-ray line. I was like, well, it's not here. Maybe it was never out on Blu-ray, even though I had it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, let me go over to the DVDs. Here's B's, B-E, B-E-T, Better Off Dead. Let's go.
Nice.
And so I'm in and out. Now the price of the movie was $8 on the cover, right? But because they're going out of business, 80% off.
Right.
Which means that movie is how much?
$2.
$2.
It's a real steal.
Steven being Steven had to actually go, I want my $2.
No, that's what the weird lady behind the counter said.
And the children were like, Dad, you're not funny, Dad.
So that was how you got your hands on the movie. So.
Right. So, I mean, in reality, it's not that crazy that I've never stumbled upon this movie before.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, dude, I've never heard of the director. I've heard of John Cusack. I recognized like 5 different weird bit players in this movie. I've never heard of this film, never seen it. Like, usually, like through the course of Zach on Film, we've watched all these classic movies. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I've heard that movie here. I've heard this line. I have not heard a single thing from this movie before.
Wow.
Not a single line.
All right.
You have heard them. Steven and I have said them.
Yeah, we've said them a lot of times.
I don't believe you.
So what's this movie about, Zach?
Better Off Dead is, it's kind of your typical 80s comedy almost.
Well,
so John Cusack plays Lane Meyer, who's this high school kid, and he is in love with, Beth. Yeah, Beth. Just straight up infatuated with her. All of his room is just lined with photos of Beth, and they live in the state of Northern California.
Yep.
Which was weird because I got on the Wikipedia in the middle of watching this movie, and I saw that this movie takes place in the state of Northern California. I'm like, what the frick are they talking about? And then
just mean Northern California.
And then like 10 minutes later, the kid said the line.
Yeah.
Anyways, so he Lane loves this girl, but unbeknownst to her, she's about ready to fall in love with the new ski captain who can do the K-12.
Yeah.
Because he's super cool, man.
Yeah, he is.
Roy Stalin. This guy Stalin.
Yeah. Which a weird name. You don't want your kid to be named Stalin. Or
that's the last
name. Well, I mean, still,
that's
change
the
it.
joke.
Change it. So she goes with Stalin, and Lane is just devastated, and so he just kind of it's like, I'm gonna kill myself, and so doesn't ever kill himself. Maybe.
Well, yeah, because he's so depressed. I mean, this is a comedy about suicide, right?
Which was like, this is
to an
weird.
extent, right?
Yeah.
Tangentially, yeah.
Yeah, because he does try to kill himself like 3 different times in the movies, 4 times in the movies. But in the process, it's about, getting over this and overcoming your fears, finding your place in the world, and realizing that just because a girl breaks up with you in high school doesn't mean that's the end of the world.
That you only dated for 6 months.
Right.
Come on, Lane.
Right.
I mean, we all get it. We've been there. That's a real relationship in high school, 6 months.
Yeah.
But we can do better.
Right.
You can do better. So that's pretty much it. It's just Lane living with his wackadoo family and his crazy Jello snorting friend.
Yeah.
Trying to get Beth back by joining the ski team, and then at the end,
he was going to be on the ski team. He was going to be he wanted to join the ski team regardless.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Based on a true story. You forgot that part.
What?
Yeah. This whole movie is based on a true story.
Savage Steve Holland.
So Savage Steve Holland, the director and the writer of this film, in high school, got dumped by his girlfriend because she wanted to date the captain of the ski team.
Oh, okay.
He went home, thought he would go ahead and kill himself.
Yeah.
Threw up a cable or something over the water pipe. Stepped on a trash can that he thought could just give way and just fall out from underneath him. Mom he tries to do it. The trash can falls. He falls into the trash can. The pipe breaks, so he doesn't kill himself. And water is pouring. He's trapped into this trash can. Water is pouring down on him. His mom comes in and starts yelling at him for breaking the water pipe. Which is
so dark.
Is in this movie. As soon as Lane gets dumped by his girlfriend, doesn't make the ski team, goes home.
Yeah.
And he's like, Beth dumped me, Mom. Oh, that's nice, dear. And goes into the garage, gets some jumper cables, tries to kill himself, and just before he does, he's like, "Wait a minute, this is death. This is death. I don't want to do that." And his mom opens the door, knocks him over, and he's struggling to not kill himself. And that's where the humor comes in. And I know that listen, I know a lot of people are going to be upset that we're trying to make light of suicide, but that's in this darkness that Savage Steve Holland had when he got dumped on by his girlfriend, he was able to create a very funny story. And each time that Lane is trying to kill himself in this movie, he has this realization that this isn't worth killing yourself over.
Mm-hmm.
But he does go through this depression cycle. But in the way that the story is told through non sequiturs and through this wacky comedy, it becomes a funny story.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to make light of depression. We're not trying to make light of suicide. But in this case, it's funny.
I mean, it definitely falls under a dark comedy type of thing, which is a comedy really for a very certain type of people. Usually, people like me who are weird and shouldn't be allowed in society.
This is Lane's mom in this movie.
Yeah.
Also based on Savage Steve Holland's real mom.
Oh God, that's funny.
In that she was always doing these McCall's recipes, and sometimes she would just either forget an ingredient or didn't have an ingredient or substitute it with something else. And one time for his birthday, she gave him frozen dinners for his birthday because she knew that he liked the cobbler.
Yeah, see, that was this thing. There's like this whole movie, like the suicide thing is this really dark humor thing, and then you get to the Christmas scene, which this movie takes place in like around Christmas.
Well, no, it takes place over a whole year. It starts in the fall and runs through the spring.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
So she does a lot of weird stuff in the beginning. Like she can't cook. And like she's like serving them glue. It looks like
it's like Jello.
I mean, it's not
raisins in it.
But then
some of the pages got stuck together.
She's like weird.
The words ran
right, and then she's giving them Christmas presents, and he's just like stacking up like 30 frozen meals. I'm like, there is something mentally wrong with this woman. Like,
well, she's trying something different. Right?
Well, I know, but it's like when I was watching this, it's like, okay, we can get through this. I'm like, is he saying like she actually has like a mental handicap where she is like not processing the world? So. But then I realized, oh no, this is just a weird absurdist comedy.
You have to approach it that way. That this is that weirdness comedy,
and that's the great thing about when I watched this movie, because again, I knew nothing about it. I knew John Cusack was in it, and it took me half the movie to realize, oh no, this is the most absurd movie I've ever seen in my entire life, and I freaking love it.
You just have to laugh.
It is so weird. It is the weirdest thing ever, and it is amazing.
Lane, what are you doing? Are you thinking about jumping? Come on, little buddy. It's just
everything.
I mean,
everything is so
his
crazy.
His best friend has been in high school for 7.5 years.
Right.
Right. He's super smart. He knows all these things.
He knows these things. Who is that guy? I couldn't find him on
that
IMDb.
is Curtis
Armstrong.
Okay.
Played Booger in Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, yes.
And he also played the one of the other detectives on Moonlighting.
On Moonlighting, yeah, he was Herbert.
Where else have we seen Curtis Armstrong?
I found him. He is in a lot of just.
He was just in a recent.
Man.
He was in a recent show recently. Now, the interesting thing,
he's one of the voices on American Dad.
Yeah,
he does
he's
the voice of Snot.
He also does voices, I believe, on what's that little cat cartoon with they live in the Candyland world.
Eek the Cat.
Yeah, Eek the Cat. Which
what is that?
He's in that. He does one of the voices on Eek the Cat, and he a show that was created and is directed by Savage Steve Holland.
Oh, okay.
Which is on the Nickelodeon network. Yes. Which is basically run
by Dan Schneider,
who plays Ricky in this movie.
Yeah, Dan Schneider invented iCarly.
Yeah, iCarly, Drake and Josh, Game Shakers.
Wait, what's his name?
Dan Schneider.
Dan Schneider. Okay,
from Schneider's Bakery. Currently, I think
he also wrote for Kenan and Kel, and I think discovered Kenan and Kel, if I'm not mistaken.
He's a writer on Good Booger.
He did a show called All That.
All That is amazing.
Yeah.
All That is where Kenan and Kel kind of roll out. Right now, they're doing a show. It's a superhero show called Henry Danger.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what was his? What was it?
Schneider.
Yeah, I found it. What was his? Ricky Smith.
Ricky. He was the big fat kid that was wooing on.
Oh my gosh! Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Dan.
Holy
he was also
crap.
Dennis Blunden on Head of the Class,
along with who was the greaser kid? Head of the class. Dang it. The kid that was the head of the class, Brian Robbins was the other kid's name. They were really good friends. And what's interesting is after Head of the Class, both Schneider and Robbins kind of dropped out of acting, really didn't do a whole lot of in front of the camera stuff, but instead stepped behind the camera. Schneider goes off and basically runs Nickelodeon. Robbins goes off and creates a bunch of teenage shows, one of them being Smallville, and all of the shows associated with Smallville. So if you're looking at what the early CW days, Brian Robbins is responsible for that. Robbins Tobin Entertainment. When you see that, that's Brian Robbins from Head of the Class, connected to Dan Schneider, and I believe they are both connected to Savage Steve Holland in some way. So this movie, when you look at it, is like a springboard for future empire builders in Hollywood and in media.
Yeah, the actress who plays Beth got killed by Freddy Krueger in the first minutes of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well,
she was the hot one in that
let's
movie,
take us back 1969. Lane's mom, Ginny Meyer, was in True Grit in 1969. And we didn't have to watch it.
No, we didn't have to watch it.
She also did an episode of Star Trek, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't she Lore? She wasn't Lore.
Miri.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this movie is just, for this time period, this is one of these things that you're just like, whoa, that guy and that guy and that guy. Even the mailman. Right. Even the mailman, if you look at it, is.
Who is that? I recognize him, too.
That's Taylor Negron. He was a stand-up comedian. He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah. Oh, man, yeah.
And, of course, Major Winchester as Dad.
Who also, you would know him as Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, yes.
Or, from MASH. You would know him from that as well.
Or the Martian Manhunter.
Martian Manhunter, if you have a bootleg copy of
he was the live-action Martian Manhunter.
Yeah. How did you find this movie, Matthew?
How did I find it?
Yeah, how did you first see it, and how did you first find it?
I'm pretty sure I found it at OK Video on VHS in college. Because,
really? College?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't watch a whole lot of movies when I was growing up. I watched tons of television, but we didn't have like the cable channels. My mother did, so I would go and I would see things, but I wouldn't watch the movies on cable channel. I'd watch like the George Carlin specials and stuff like that. But I'm almost certain that we watched it on VHS, and I immediately fell in love with it, partly because of Cusack.
Oh, yeah.
But mostly because of Diane Franklin.
Yeah.
Who was also Bill's French lady in
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just love this movie was my jam in 1990, 1991. This was all I was about.
For me, this movie was like 1986, I want to say. Because I was in, I think, a French class. With just a bunch of weirdos. Mostly upper class people for some reason. And this guy sat behind me. I knew his sister was a year younger than me, and we were kind of friends. But Kurt was always like saying this weird stuff. I mean, his favorite movie of all time is, what is it? Top Secret. Yeah. And so one day he just starts quoting these lines from this movie. And I'm like, what movie are you quoting? What is this coming from? He goes, it's from Better Off Dead. And I'm like, I've never seen this movie before. And he's like, oh, if you ever get a chance to see this movie, you've got to see it, Steve. And he just kept pushing me. Push off a cliff. And so this would have been, maybe it was so it was about a year past. He graduated. A couple of years later, it's our junior. So this would be like 87.
Yeah.
I go to our junior prom and go to the after prom party, and it's at a bowling alley, and there's a ton of things going on. And off in the corner, they have a bunch of movies playing on VHS that just, if somebody wants to plop down and watch a movie for a little bit, you can go do that. And I'm walking by and I see this thing where I'd remember Curtis telling me there's this scene where this boy's in the trash can and these two black guys are like, that's a perfectly good waste of a white boy. And I was like, oh my God, this is the movies that he's talking about. And I just sat there and I just shut everything out and I focused on this movie for the next hour and a half. And then when it was done, I asked one of the organizers, like, did you get this from the video store down the street? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, is it okay if I go and turn this in for you on Monday instead of you taking it back tomorrow? He's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the weekend, I just watched that movie religiously. And for 2 years in high school, it was my jam. This is the movie of how you create, in my mind, funny comedy, absurdity. And I love the absurdity of it because, you have mom that is boiling bacon because her husband doesn't like all the grease that comes with bacon. You've got these two Asian kids who one of them doesn't speak English. The other one only learned to speak English by watching Howard Cosell on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Yeah. And they taunt Lane relentlessly by wanting to drag race him, and they've got these big speakers mounted on their car, and then the one just talks into a microphone. It's like, Lane Meyer. It just is doing this Howard Cosell impression, and it's just crazy. Lane wants to commit suicide. He reads in the newspaper about somebody burning himself up, so he's got this primer fluid for his motor engine.
Right.
He's dabbing it on himself, and he gets pulled into this dinner with the French girl and Ricky's family, and his mom sitting next to him, and the mom picks it up and starts drinking. She goes, oh, this is the best hooch in the world. She lights up a cigarette, blows herself up, and it's like, that's funny. I mean, she doesn't die, but I mean, it's funny.
Yeah, that was the great thing, is like all of these horrible things happen to these people, and none of them die. Like the mom has like a bandage over her face, and the paper boy,
the paper
gets
boy
pushed
falls
off a
off
cliff
the top of a mountain.
He's like, all right, I'm fine.
And then dang it, now I forgot what part I was going to say about some absurdity stuff. Oh, Badger. The son, his brother in this movie is the best.
Yes.
It doesn't have a single speaking word,
but
has the best moments in this movie where he reads a book on picking up trashy women. And the next scene, he's got all these hot women in his bedroom. He gets a thing about building a space shuttle. And at the end of the movie, you see he's blasting himself off into space. It's such a good movie just from absurd points of view.
When Lane picks up the newspaper and there's the guy setting himself on fire, there's an article in there about his brother hosting an orgy. It's like just a really quick throwaway thing.
Yeah.
But it's so funny.
Well, and that's the one thing that I like about this comedy, and for fans of, and probably your generation, Zach, for fans of the Billy Madison movies, there's the setups in some of the Billy Madison movies, or Happy Madison or whatever.
Madison,
it's Billy Madison Productions, but the one movie, and I think it must be Billy Madison, is the one where they throw the banana peel off on the road at the beginning, and it doesn't pay off until towards the end of the movie. That happens in Better Off Dead so much, where things are set up like 10 scenes before or 30 minutes before, and then they pay off later on. And you're like, wow, that's brilliant. That is a brilliant setup throughout this entire piece. And I think that's one of the things that really makes this movie well thought out, is the fact that it is very boom, 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 boom. Things are set up and it's absurd.
But it's like there's like the pacing to this film, which is the humor, which you don't always see in like a comedy. Usually it's like we have a laugh every like 2.5 minutes to keep the audience engaged. But in this movie, there is this slow build to like this crescendo of absurdity. And they're like, okay, we can't go higher. We have to do like a semi-serious ski chase down this hill. He's only gonna have one ski, so it's gonna be weird, and we're gonna push a kid off the cliff, and like that saved that whole scene for me. I was like, oh, we're going into total like 80s power hour television of this ski thing. Like, but then we throw a kid off a cliff. I'm like, oh yes, okay, we're still there.
So in the 80s movies, in the 80s comedy genre, we see this a lot, where you have the nerds versus the jocks in
in the everything.
Yeah. What movie am I thinking of? I was just
Revenge of the Nerds.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got that going on, where they have to come up with this. It comes down to this final contest where they have to face off with one another. You're going to see it again next week when we watch One Crazy Summer. You're going to see it in what is it? Summer Vacation. What's the one with John Candy in? Is it Summer Vacation?
I think so. Yeah.
You see it also in
Summer Rental, maybe.
Summer Rental, maybe that's it. You see it in Caddyshack. You see this all the time, where it's like
you see it in Meatballs.
Yeah,
you see it in Stripes,
where the underdog has to take on the one percenters and knock them down a peg to prove that, hey, we're just as good, or the underdog has to come out on top. And so in the 80s movies, this was a big deal. And with the success of the teen comedies that were going on, suddenly the Hollywood was really pushing to do teen comedy. That's where it's at. It's got to be funny. It's got to be really good. Unfortunately, we don't know what the budget was on this movie. I'm guessing it's around $10 million.
$8.
Better Off Dead did not make a lot of money in the box office. It was basically a failure in the box office. It gave, fortunately, One Crazy Summer was already in production, so they couldn't cancel the product. But basically, this movie came out. John Cusack hated the movie, walked out of the premiere 20 minutes into it, threatened Savage Steve Holland the next day, and was like, this is a horrible movie. You lied to me. And, now he's kind of softened, I guess, on a Reddit AMA. He was like, no, it's just, I wish it could have been better. It just wasn't. I don't think it represented me correctly or whatever. But this movie has made money over time. And unfortunately, Savage Steve Holland was blacklisted in Hollywood, and that's why he went to television and started doing all these real cool things on television. So,
and it's like, but it makes total sense, because if I like rack my brain for comedies like this, I don't think I've ever seen one in a movie before. No. There's no, like, the idea of an absurdist comedy is not in film. You can get it in television every once in a while, but to get this level of absurdity in a comedy is, I literally wasn't even expecting, because it doesn't ever happen.
If I were to equate this with other movies that you may have seen, and Matthew may agree or disagree, but I would say that this is in line with this would be an American take on what Monty Python humor is. that Monty Python humor is absurdist. I want to exchange this parrot. I got a dead parrot. I need to, or silly walks or whatever. This is that 80s version of absurdist humor that you would get from British television in the 60s and 70s.
It's definitely an influence.
Yeah, go ahead.
You see it in other films of a similar genre. You see it in the Zucker brothers' early stuff in Top Secret. You see it in Airplane, but you see this movie has something that especially those Zucker films don't. And Zach talked about it. It's that comedic timing.
Well, yeah.
I think that part of the thing that we, you would say is the influence of Monty Python is just the timing is machine gun timing. Not necessarily that it's fast or high paced, but it is perfectly synced. You get to a point where it's like, it can't get any worse, and then Porky walks in and makes him put on a pig nose,
Right.
This movie is filled with moments that you feel like they can't get any weirder, any funnier, any more bizarre. And then they do it, and then you're like, oh, well, they can't do it again. And for, 67 minutes, you're doing that, basically.
The only thing that I would say is when you're looking at Top Secret or you're looking at Hot Shots or you're looking at Airplane or Naked Gun or any of those things, those are parodies. This is not, Better Off Dead is not trying to be a parody of anything. It's just trying to say, let's tell a crazy story and have fun with it. And let's just push the boundaries where we can. And it's not parodying anything because by 84, 85, we're still in the middle of, we haven't reached the saturation point where we have to start making scary movies, scary movie and that line of stuff.
This is fully within those 80s teenage flicks.
So to me, this doesn't hit as a parody. It does certainly qualify as dark humor, dark comedy, black comedy, whatever. But man, it is. I watched this just yesterday too, and it's just like, oh, I miss this movie.
Yeah.
How much I miss this movie from the music. I mean, we get a whole Van Halen sequence that's animated with these hamburgers because Lane's imagination runs wild, and he gets this job at this Pig Burgers, and he has this wild imagination that goes out of control as he imagines this hamburger come to life, and it's just this musical montage sequence that, again, is using some of Savage Steve Holland's talents that he picked up in the California Arts Institute, and is showing something in there. All the animated sequences that we see, not the stop motion, but the hand animated stuff, that's all Savage Steve Holland's drawings.
Oh, wow.
So, again, when we go see One Crazy Summer next week, you're going to see a lot of that same aesthetic appear in that movie as well, in addition to John Cusack appearing in that movie as well.
Well, and of course, this is the height of MTV, too. This is 1985. So that sequence was perfectly in keeping with the zeitgeist. And it's amazing to just look at that claymation and see when he busts out the Eddie Van Halen guitar. You're like, this should be a video for something.
Yeah.
I wanted to see that. I want to see more of that guitar playing hamburger.
Well, we will, because in a couple of weeks we will be watching Everybody Wants Some.
Yeah.
For our sequence here. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, this movie, man. I'm still just trying to think of anything that I can relate it to. I think the best I can do for current stuff is.
You can't.
It's only in television. It's like Key and Peele will do some really weird stuff.
But again,
like the
look and see where the influence comes
the last
from.
3 sketches on like SNL every week are like, like a weird absurdist thing. They don't always work, but like they're just like weird as hell.
When they throw in those porn star sketches at the end of the show.
Yeah, that's what this movie is. But it figures out a way to stretch it into a feature-length film without like going too far and not playing it too safe either. It's like they are doing there's stop motion animation, there's claymation, there's like and like their mom is like cooking an octopus that is like semi alive at one point. Like it is just bonkers crazy through this whole thing.
Right, but if you think about what Better Off Dead is, it's a series of skits, right?
Yeah.
So my mom was a terrible cook. Okay, well, this movie got made due in part to the Fonz. So Savage Steve Holland had made a short film.
Yeah.
Henry Winkler had seen it at some film festival and gone up and said, this is a great story. And I think it was basically the short version of Better Off Dead, where he wanted to contemplate killing himself. And Henry Winkler was like, wow, this is great. This is a great story.
Yeah.
And he goes, do you have more of this? And Savage Steve Holland was like, yes. And he goes, well, let me introduce you to people, because he didn't have a direct influence in saying, I'm going to make this movie for you or whatever. But he had the connections to say, you need to get a hold of this person, this person. Let me introduce you so that this movie can be made, because I get a kick out of it. But if you think about it, it's a series of shorts. I'm going to go and talk about the love of my life. Meanwhile, she is about ready to dump me. I'm going to go to the ski thing, and of course you meet the big bad and the goofy and the goofy friend. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I would have been on the team, but the captain let the clock run a couple of seconds longer so that I wouldn't make the team. Then my girlfriend breaks up with me, and oh man, I'm so devastated by that. So let's have a sequence where I try to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. Then let me have a sequence that involves the young kid with the coupons, just obsessed with coupons and the cat thing and all this stuff. And so each of these, even though they're strung together and there's overlap, they are a series of just sequences that you could take any of them out and it would still be a fine movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, the setup of the first time that we see Lane and the Asian racers come up next to him and want to have a drag race, he's already overshot the intersection, so he's backed up. So he hasn't put it into drive. He's still in reverse. Right. He's all excited about that, doesn't pay attention, backs up into this truck. Big fat white guy comes out and is yelling at him, smoking a cigar. A couple scenes later, he's at an intersection again. The guys pull up and he's like, puts it into drive. He's ready to go. Light hits green. He pulls forward, doesn't realize there's a truck in front of him. Same guy that he hits.
Yeah.
Then jump forward like 5 more scenes, 10, 15 minutes. His dad has gotten him a job at Pig Burger. Who's the owner of the Pig Burger? The guy that he's run into a million times already.
Yep. Truly a sight to behold. Mate, a once great champ, now a study in mawkishness.
Sadly, when we talk about mawkishness, so the actor who played one of the Howard Cosell speaking character, Yuji Okimoto, he had actually practiced when he was getting ready for his audition. He had watched all the Wide World of Sports, had really tried to nail the accent perfectly as he could, went in and did it, but of course it has the Asian flair to it. Yep. Everyone at the audition was like, oh, this is great. This is going to be really good. Then at the last minute, just before the premiere, Yuji gets a phone call, and it's the producer saying, you know what? We were afraid that the audiences wouldn't understand what you were saying. So we had Rich Little come in and dub over all of the voice. So that's actually Rich Little that you hear, and Rich Little for
Rich Little.
It makes sense.
He's a comedian voice impersonator from the 70s.
Okay.
So they had him come in and do all that stuff. So even though the acting is great and you really believe the kid's speaking, it's really Rich Little doing during the dubs. So
and if you've seen Karate Kid 2, Yuji actually plays Chozen, the guy who fights Johnny at the end. He speaks really clearly. I mean,
he's fine.
It's one of those moments where you feel terrible. Because, A, they gave Rich Little money. Yeah. And B, he seemed like he had such fun with it. Just looking at, the visuals and just, I feel bad every time I hear that story. It just,
This is a movie about a kid who doesn't belong. I mean, the best part is when we get into geometry class.
Which is a great scene, which is, again, so weird.
Everybody loves geometry class.
Yeah. I know, right? Which, again, you're trying to show John Cusack is Lane as the outsider, and everyone's like super into this class, and everyone's applauding the instructor, who now, what is his name?
Yeah, that dude's super familiar too.
That's Vincent Schiavelli.
Yeah, Vincent Schiavelli, who you know from Ghost. He plays the angry ghost on the train.
He was also one of the Johns in Buckaroo Banzai.
In Buckaroo Banzai, which Zach has never seen.
I straight up only know Ghost because it has the thing with the pottery
so you know when
wheel,
he's riding. You know when he's
No, I never watched it.
Oh,
I just know the pottery wheel thing.
Damn it, Zach!
I could have sworn we did Buckaroo Banzai for this show. Was that a bonus track? That was a bonus.
You and I have talked about it. It's just as a extra episode. But that may have even been before Zach joined any of the shows. So
way to go, Zach!
Yeah, thanks, but man. I mean, everyone's just like, "Oh, I want to be in this class, and it's so great!" And everyone's like opening up their briefcase, and there's a dot matrix printer inside, printing off homework. Somebody else has a big accordion folder where all of her homework is organized. Another one has a big binder of everything that's all put in there. And Lane reaches in, and he's got a piece of paper with gum in it that says "Do your homework," and it's just like, wow, this is just really brilliant. And then there's Booger. Or I'm sorry, Charles Lamar.
Charles DeMar.
Sitting there with a fetal pig in a jar, tapping it.
Yeah.
Wake up. It just, it's just, from the visual humor alone, this movie is, I definitely think, something everyone should watch.
Yeah. It's like, it's so, I mean, it's so crazy. I was watching this movie, like, this movie is perfect GIF material.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, I'm gonna favorite all these GIFs because this is all I'm using from now on. It's just Better Off Dead GIFs because there's so many just crazy things like when Lane does the drag racing, you have the Asian kid, he's putting on his racing gloves, and Lane is putting on like washing gloves with the fingertips ripped out.
Yeah, I mean,
there's just so many funny things. They're so small.
So, as you said, from the writing aspect, it's the timing is everything, where you have to line these things up so that every 2.5 minutes, as you said, we're getting a laugh, which I think you do in this movie. There's a couple of musical sequences where Lane takes Monique out to dinner, and it's just basically a musical montage. But again, it's an 80s movie, so you have to have a musical montage where they're fixing up the Camaro, they're going out to dinner.
But like the dinner thing ends with a joke. It ends with the 30-minute setup of the joke when his friend's like, a guy's that play guitar, you need to learn. You need to pick up the sax again. Pick up the sax. You're gonna have all the ladies.
And even the fact that the Christmas scene where he's getting all these TV dinners, he takes her to the pig burger that's closed, and he's got it all set up for a romantic dinner, and he's like, these were that I got these for Christmas, and he sets down the frozen dinners for them to eat, and it's like, that's
right.
Call back.
But from a composition standpoint, from a cinematography standpoint, not a whole lot. Going on in this. It's very straightforward. This is a low budget film, I'm sure. It's $10 million, $12 million tops. It's probably was pushed through very quickly, so you're not going to spend a lot of time doing setups or getting takes exact. But I think the visual humor and the setup of the gimmicks on screen work really, really well, to where it you can kind of forgive the plainness of this movie.
Yeah, but it's a plainness, but it's not any different than pretty much any other comedy you really see, unless you get into like some very specific. Like Edgar Wright type visual comedy. It takes like film technique and makes it comedy. Most comedies are pretty paint by the numbers, essentially, like not disparaging at all. You're all great cinematographers and everything, but it's not like you're watching, I don't know, some great cinematographer. It's not like you're watching
Federico Fellini.
You're not watching Fellini. You're not watching Tree of Life. You're not watching something like you're watching a comedy that used composition fine. Lighting was fine. It did a lot of weird things. Actually, just one thing with audio in the scene when Lane is meeting Beth for the first time, and they're like overlaying their internal thoughts, which was really hard to pick up on at first because you just thought like the audio was off because you see their mouth moving, and then it like slowly builds into like you actually are hearing what they're thinking, which is a really nice thing. And kind of hard to pull off without doing something different visually and just from watching it, but it did work. It was not like the best executed thing in the world.
It's odd because I was listening to this on Blu-ray and it may have been remixed, and I don't know about your DVD and how it was, but I remember watching this on VHS where it was very clear what they were saying.
Oh, really?
And I remember it being much more clear than what we had on this DVD release. So there may be some mixing that has changed. I could have swore the scene where Lane is getting ready for his first day of job, and he's putting the Q-tips all over in his face and everything. I could have swore that was a different song that was originally played over that, but I couldn't find anything that said that the music had been switched out there. So, maybe some failing memories or things from the past, but
even I'm sorry, I'm just like still stuck on this absurdness and how it built up. Even right in that shower scene,
at the very beginning,
Lane gets into the shower with his socks on.
Oh yeah, that was
and
great.
It's like, and then
who hasn't done that?
I've never done that. That's so weird.
Well, probably you don't wear socks.
No, I don't wear socks when I go to bed either.
In the 80s, in the 70s, man, houses were not as warm as they used to be. And so there were some, I remember going to bed in the wintertime and it was like, man, it's cold. I'm going to put on some socks tonight so my feet stay warm.
Yeah.
And there were 1 or 2 times where I would get up in the morning so sleepy, I would just get into the shower and plop. Damn it, I left my socks on.
And then did you also dry them off?
No, I would take them off because everybody, I'm almost certain that a majority of the people who grew up as teens, preteens to teenagers in the 80s probably walked into the shower with their socks on by accident at least once.
That's so funny.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Says Matthew, who does it all the time.
I literally don't know what he's talking about.
Like, if that's a real thing, that is the coolest thing I've never heard about the 80s and 70s.
I don't believe that is a thing about that.
You know what? Someone's going to write in and like, I've totally walked in the shower. Somebody has my socks on.
Yeah.
And we're going to have like a whole new group of people.
Oh, yeah. And especially if you're a real little kid. Oh, our kids, when they were much younger, there was one time where the youngest crawled into the tub and it's like, why are you still wearing your underwear? And then he looks down, he's like, So it happens, accidents happen.
Yeah.
But then, to follow through with the follow-up of actually hair drying it, because you would expect that, he walked in, we don't see him taking the socks off and flipping them over the top of the shower rack. But no, then he's blow drying them.
Right.
That's great stuff.
Yeah, man. It's just, it's like a movie that I never expected.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you get this every once in a while. You've never heard anything about a movie, and you're just like, just watch it. It'll be great. Like, you didn't even say it'd be like amazing. Like, we didn't talk much about the movie before I watched it. You're like, okay, it'll be just fine.
I just figured you had seen it.
No, man, it was like mind blowing how funny this movie was. It made me sad for like comedy films now.
Yeah, and Savage Steve Holland, they have talked to him today. I forget, I think it was for the 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary of the movie.
25th anniversary.
And he was basically like, look, I was given a blessing to be able to do this film because there is no way you could do this movie today. First of all, from the subject matter of, teen suicide.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But then the absurdist humor would totally not fly, and the comedy censors would jump in and say, you can't do this, you can't insult French people, you can't do all these things. He just basically says you could not make this movie today without infuriating everyone.
Yeah.
And he's right. I that was one of the things I was thinking of even before I went to go look at the research on it and found that quote. I was sitting there watching the movie. I was like, there's no way, as much as I would love to see it done, there's no way you can make this movie today.
And it's like no one, I mean, something aside, if you made an absurdist comedy, like there's not enough of the population that's going to go to the theater to watch it to make it profitable. So no studio is going to be like, yeah, sure. Like make this weird movie.
What was the I mean, we have something, I mean, it's not totally absurdist, but it's out there kind of subject matter. I mean, The End. What was that movie with the end of the world?
Oh, This Is the End?
Is that what it is?
The End or something
with,
like that.
A Friend for the End of the World?
No, not Friend for the End of the World.
With Rogan and
with
all
Rogan,
those guys.
The End, yeah.
That kind of pushes on the absurdist a little bit, but not quite. It's not like this
it's not like the
sequitur stuff that just comes out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about Emma Thompson running into or Emma Watson running into the room saying, "Give me all your crap," that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Or like the
or Magic
the
Mike,
ending,
where everybody's in heaven.
Everyone's in heaven, with Backstreet Boys, which was great. Yeah, but that movie, it like hits so many, like Seth Rogen and his friends, like it is their kind of movie,
right?
And
I think that's your point, though. I mean, this is a movie that, first of all, no one else would have ever tried to make. And part of the reason I think it's successful is because it feels like a very specific, very personal viewpoint. This doesn't necessarily feel like a real story of someone's life, but it feels like something that only this creator could do. Then whether that means could get away with or could successfully make into a movie, this would not have worked any other way. And I don't think it would have worked as a standard, studio romantic film, because it would have taken away too much from the weird darkness and the fact that everybody in this is literally an utter failure. Monique is like the only character who has any promise in life whatsoever. It feels, if you look at it, it almost feels like it's a first-person story being told by an unreliable narrator. So he's telling you all these terrible things and the most horrible stories of his life.
This is, it's not absurdist, but another movie that came out the same time that I know you've seen is Christmas Story. Christmas Story is kind of follows the same format as this one follows the same format as Christmas Story because it's these little vignettes of this is what happened. And had there been a voiceover, had John Cusack done a voiceover on this, it would have been a Christmas Story kind of thing. From top to bottom. You can kind of see some of those parallels there. So why would this movie get made in 1980? I mean, if you think about it, between 1976 or really 63 is when the first duplex movie theater opened up. We start to see the expansion of the multiplex and the megaplex theater. So by 1988, we had our first 25 screen theater open up, the first megaplex. But between 79 and 88, theaters are really expanding, trying to get as many screens up there as possible, which means that you're going to have to fill them with something. You can't have every single screen showing Star Wars or Jaws or Empire Strikes Back. You can maybe have 2 or 3 or 4 of those theaters doing that, but you can't have all of them doing it. So that means there's a greater demand for movies to be produced. And with the teen comedy, it just means like, let's crank things out. It's really interesting to think about the 80s in terms of the multiplex and how it almost mirrored the fact that in the 20s and 30s, people were so starved for movies that it was like, we have to create something every week of the year to have out there, or else we're not going to survive as a studio. In this case, it's almost the opposite, where mall mentality, where the mall was where you went in the 70s and 80s and maybe even the 60s to go and do things. That was the place to hang out and to be seen. And so kids were going there all the time. Kids are going to stay out late. They're going to make out. We've seen the movie that we watched before we referenced earlier, the Fast Times at Ridgemont High, right? That's where everyone's going. So we need to put teen comedy movies in there. Let's just start doing it with as much stuff as we can. Better Off Dead falls in there, doesn't do great, but it's a movie that got made probably because of the demand for the multiplex. So something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it's a real shame that this movie isn't available in a wider sense online. In this day and age, like there's no reason why like a movie shouldn't be online, really.
Well, that's the thing that really surprised me, is why this movie isn't online.
Right.
Now, One Crazy Summer is available. That's the movie we're watching next week. It is available online. In fact, the next 3 movies are available, and for you can go and get that. But this one, I don't know why it's not. I don't know if there's some streaming rights issues mixed up, because I don't know what CBS Productions would be doing with this movie or anything like that.
So I don't know if I've ever had a life goal. I don't know if I've ever created a goal like I need to accomplish this in my life time to feel like I impacted the world in a positive manner. But I think this is my true calling. This is my hero story. I need
putting Better Off Dead available on streaming.
Absolutely. We all need to band together as a humanity and as listeners of Zach on Film, and we need to come up with a way to get this movie on like Netflix or iTunes, because more people need to see this movie. And I think if I accomplish that, my life will be worth something.
Do you think it might have something to do with the 30th anniversary? Did they do a re-release or something weird like that?
Well, if they did a re-release, that's definitely... No, not in theaters, they didn't. No way. I mean, that's when the Blu-ray release came out on DVD. But you would think if they were going to do something, that's when it would have hit all the...
I remember there being something 30th anniversary happened with this movie last fall.
That's probably the Blu-ray release or something.
Yeah, so I'm either going to figure out why this movie isn't on streaming, or we're going to start like a groundswell petition to get this movie in a digital format where more people can watch it.
It may just be the interest level is not high.
Well, we're gonna show it's high.
I would probably bet at one time Better Off Dead was on Netflix and it just cycled out of their cycle.
I'll tell you this, I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, get to the bottom of it.
Because
Zach.
You know what? We're almost out of Hastings. Hastings are closing down. We're not going to be able to find this movie anymore.
I know, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, crap, what if, and that's why I was looking when I got back into town, I was like, I wonder if One Crazy Summer is available, because if not, I'm going to need to make another run to Hastings, or try to order it on Amazon, because there's no way we can get it here in time for Zach to watch it. So fortunately it is, but here's something else. Better Off Dead came out at a time when the multiplex was huge, when the malls were probably at their peak. And it's gone downhill ever since then. As I mentioned, we were in Hutchinson last week, and we went to their mall.
Yeah, I've heard their mall's really bad.
Oh, it is. There was like...
I think it's empty.
8% filled.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mostly empty space. And I was like, why is this happening? How can this be? And yet, I think it's because, and you would know because you work with econ development and those kind of people. Apparently, they would rather have a standalone store than be put into a mall that may have very expensive rents or something like that.
Yeah, that's always a big
deal. Hey, we'll build a $10 million building, but and then fill it with our stuff for 5 years. But lo and behold, for heaven forbid, we'll pay $10,000 a month to go into a place that's already built for us, and we'll remodel to suit. So I was really surprised. But even here locally, our mall is basically dead.
Yeah,
and
it's come back to life.
It's pretty sad.
We're giving it CPR.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you injecting it with 20 cc's of Better Off Dead?
We are. Yeah, and so we can't lose movies like this, Steven.
I know, right?
It's not like this movie is in the National Registry in Congress.
It's not.
It should be.
Could be. You can submit anytime, Zach. I mean, they have an application process. You can put it in there.
Guys, I've never been more serious about something in my entire life. This movie is going to get recognized, or I think like communists have won. I think that's what it's either become super popular again or the American dream's dead.
Well, unfortunately, Siskel and Ebert gave it a thumbs down when it came out. They thought it was a horrible movie. That may have had something to do with it because if you were
I love
watching,
you. Come on,
at the movies or whatever it was, I forget what incarnation it was at that point.
It would have been at the movies in 85.
But if you were watching at the movies and they gave it a thumbs down, everybody in America would have said, well, there's no reason to go see this movie.
Right.
Because that's how you found out if this was a movie.
That's why you're on Rotten Tomato now. It's like 54%. Get out of here.
Yeah, this movie's rated 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it still has a very good standing.
Yeah,
and I really think, and I know that there have been some people that were asking about movies that I could tell the moment that you finished watching the film because you popped up that the GIF online about from the movie, and someone's like, "Oh man, you should have you ever seen that movie, Zach?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to talk about it this week on Zach on Film." And the person was just like,
yeah, he's great.
And this is a great movie. I mean, there are a lot of hidden gems that came out in the 80s. Buckaroo Banzai, for example, is one that we've talked about before. Is just one of these movies that we've got to crank something out. Maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't, but now we're moving on to the next thing. And they've developed a cult following since then. And Better Off Dead is one of those. I don't want to spoil anything about One Crazy Summer, but Savage Steve Holland, John Cusack, teaming together again after John Cusack has told him, don't ever talk to me ever again.
So wait, I had like one question. So we didn't really talk about Monique very often.
Right.
But so she's this really important character, French character, lives across the street from Lane.
Foreign exchange student.
Yeah. So my first question is there a trope, Matthew? I think you know a lot about tropes of girl in baseball hat. Because the first time we see Monique in this movie, she's wearing an LA Dodgers hat.
Right.
And then people are walking and she throws it away. I'm like, I don't know anything else about this movie. Dude is ending up with this chick because she was in a baseball hat. Is that a thing?
Probably not, but she's wearing a baseball hat because she came to California to
but we don't know that.
Fan.
But it doesn't matter. It's like a girl was in a baseball hat.
I don't know. In the 80s,
she's the chosen
girl in the baseball hat is often the cutest girl.
That's what I was saying. I was like, this has got to be a thing.
Well, there's definitely that thing of, the she's all that, the girl in the baseball cap or with the big thick glasses or the ponytail.
Yeah.
And you realize that she's actually, the prettiest and the sweetest and the kindest and the best.
Right.
It almost borders on Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but I don't find her manic or pixie. So
she's tiny.
She is tiny, but I don't think she's crazy.
Yeah.
I also had to check when Breakfast Club came out, which was the same year.
80s,
85, yeah. And
85,
because Monique is wearing one of those like oversized trench coats.
Well,
which,
but that was the fashion for everybody at the time.
I was just like, is this a thing?
Yes,
but
it was. Trench coats were definitely a thing in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were the thing.
And dusters became more popular in the 90s because of, what's that Rat Pack cowboy movie?
Young Guns.
Young Guns.
Oh.
The greatest movie in the world.
I don't think so. I think Better Off Dead has it.
The greatest
one thing
cowboy movie with Kiefer Sutherland.
For decades, I loved this movie in the 80s and 90s and kind of fell away from it because it's like, okay, now I'm on to some other cool things. Curtis Armstrong and John Cusack are going through the shopping through the grocery store and he's like, oh, you can't kill yourself, man. I know this town sucks, but you got to get over this. And he says something to the effect of, I can't even get any real drugs in this town.
Right.
And I'm watching this, and I again watch it for the first time, but first time in a long time. I guess I never caught it before, but he's moving across a whipped cream can.
Yeah, he's doing whippets,
and I'm like,
man.
Oh my gosh, I never caught it before about he's doing whippets as his method of getting high in this.
Yeah, he's snorting the nitrous oxide out of the whippet can.
Yeah, and I've never caught that before. I just never caught that before.
Oh, I didn't know it's a thing. What do? You like barely press it so like the gas comes out?
Yeah, the gas comes out.
You press it so the gas comes out.
You can either inhale. Well, I mean, I shouldn't tell you how to do drugs, but you can either inhale it off the nozzle, or some people will put it into a bag and huff it that way.
That seems
don't
really convoluted.
huff, kids.
Yeah, don't do that.
Huffing is bad.
Never heard of that.
First of all, the propellant in the can doesn't do that anymore because it's the year 2016.
Yeah.
Fluorocarbons are now a different sort of thing. And secondly, Charles DeMar is no kind of I
He's
can't
no
move
booger.
my right arm. He is not any sort of role model. He's not a
No.
a guy you want to grow up.
He's no
to be like.
booger
I
who
think
has
he,
done
what,
every.
what is he? He snorts Jello in this.
Yes.
And he's like, "What? This is pure snow.
Yeah, he's on the
Dude, the
mountain.
street value is this.
He
The
sorts
street value of this mountain."
You know where I can score some?
Oh yeah, I mean it's all supposed to be tongue in cheek.
I've been
You don't
going
know
to
what
this high
huffing is?
school for 7.5 years. I'm no dummy.
Yeah, no. This
Yeah.
is. I mean, he is one of those characters that I'm so glad the character is in there. Even though again, this would be one of those censor board things that the studios would definitely be like, oh no, we can't have somebody that's this into drugs and promoting drugs in a fun way because that would be totally
the 80s
bad.
stoner character no longer flies.
Well, yeah, because this movie is what, like a PG or something?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. This would be.
Well, there was no PG-13, so it was.
I mean,
either-
the closest you get to nudity is Lane is like, I can get any girl that I want to go out with me, including the cheerleader who's dating the entire basketball team.
Yeah.
And so she wears roller skates. So he borrows a pair of roller skates and follows after and trips into her and falls and rips her entire uniform off to where she's only standing there in her underwear. I mean, that's about as sexy as you get, except for the scene where he and Beth are losing their virginity. And you don't even see anything there either, except for the car wheels being stolen. Which is a fantastic scene, man. Can't wait till I can show this to my kids.
Yeah, I'm
wait another 8 years or so.
I think by about 12 or 13, they should be able to watch this.
Yeah, it would be bad. That'd be
I
bad.
don't know, man.
Man, it'd be fine. It'd be funny.
Oh, yeah.
They'd laugh.
I think so. I think the oldest would probably get a kick out of it.
I think I just froze the left half of my brain.
Yeah. Man, yeah, it's just this was a great movie. I'm so happy we watched this.
This movie
my life
is
is better
a
with this.
Quote festival.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
You
yeah.
can quote like every single scene.
On my Facebook page, I had just taken a picture of the cover and said, hey, here's my experience about getting this. Thank God Hastings is still here for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then under the comments, people just start quoting
Yep.
lines from movies. This is a highly quotable movie.
Yeah, I was watching it and because the first presidential debate was happening last night. And I chose to watch
instead
this
of watching, here's what we should do. We should promote, instead of watching presidential debates, watch Better Off Dead.
Well, that's what I did, man.
You'd rather be better off dead. You're better off dead than watching the presidential debates. That's what
I said.
Yes.
I said I'm watching like turn off the debate and turn on Better Off Dead because this movie is the best kind of
what'd your
wackadoo.
wife think?
And then she thought it was hilarious.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, she fell asleep at the end, but she thought it was hilarious.
On,
and then, so I sent that out in a tweet, and then Dave Norwood on Twitter says, he just sends back the line, "Gee, Ricky, I'm sorry your mom blew up." And he, I sent my tweet, that scene happened, and literally 20 seconds later, this dude sent in this line, and I lost it all over again.
Oh yeah. It's just hysterical.
Yeah, man.
It's too bad John Cusack didn't like the film.
Yeah, what's his deal, man?
He just thought it didn't.
Did he get a Q-tip up his butt or what?
He just thought that it didn't represent him. He felt like he lied. Even he was lied to about what the movie was about and everything. Even though he sat in the edit bay with Holland to edit the film.
Was he not there? Was he not there on set when they were cooking an octopus? He was in that scene.
He was. I don't know.
There.
Maybe he thought it was supposed to be funnier or supposed to be. I don't know.
I don't know. Cusack just does not strike me as the kind of person who would be heavily into the absurd themes.
Yeah.
I kind of get this feeling that John is kind of a serious-minded man, and it may be that he took the absurdity as silliness or foolishness and thought it was over the top. I don't know. I say I don't know him. I know that he has apparently, according to Charles DeMar and the people from last year, he has mellowed a bit, but you can see him being one of those serious, intense, artisty guys. And I can say there's nothing wrong with
such classics as 2012 and Hot Tub Time Machine. Yeah.
Grosse Point Blank. You know what?
That one's actually better than 2012.
That was a mean and judgy remark. And I am offended that you would make. He was in 1408. 1408 was scary and ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, don't watch that movie. That movie's scary.
No, that movie's way over the top.
Don't watch that. Don't watch that, man.
But you know what? I forgive him anything for Say Everything, or for everything for Say Anything.
Is that with the boombox over his head?
Yes.
Yeah.
This dude was in every 80s romantic comedy, wasn't he?
He was in 16 Candles.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And he plays one of the nerds. I mean, he's like a background nerd. There's
How old is this dude?
John Cusack, he was like older 50. He's like 55,
I'm
something
on his
like
page.
that.
He's
I was thinking I'm on his Google right now because I was like, I bet John Cusack owns a bird. because he's weird. So
maybe
I don't know. John Cusack Bird didn't do anything.
If you watch 16 Candles, he is one of Farmer Ted's friends, and just kind of hangs out in the background. I don't think he has a speaking line in that movie. 16 Candles, I believe, also has a John Cusack's sister in it, Joan Cusack, as the woman as the girl in braces or in the neck brace.
Yeah, Joan's in a lot of the things that John is in.
Yeah. Have you ever seen 16 Candles?
No.
Okay, so in December, because December is a happy time, maybe starting the Thanksgiving week, we will have a John Hughes marathon.
How many more does he have? We watched
John Hughes.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Does he have?
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, I've seen
Babies
that.
Stay
16
Out.
Candles.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Babies Stay Out.
We've seen
Babies
House
Stay Out.
Rock.
Birthday Club.
Yeah.
Breakfast Club.
Babies Day Out.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay, I've seen that.
Home Alone.
Matthew.
What?
So we can get in 5 weeks. We can get the essential John Hughes films knocked out.
You know what?
No time.
These are John Hughes movies. Home Alone 2.
Wait, how is that a John Hughes movie?
John Hughes made it?
Oh, did he really?
Yes, John Hughes made Home Alone. He made the Beethoven movies. He made what's that
That's why
one?
I said we're going to be
those.
looking at the essential John Hughes.
I mean,
films.
Home
What's
Alone
the one
is
with
like
Jennifer Connelly and Brad from
movie.
Pulp Fiction.
Brad from Pulp Fiction.
And-
Curly Sue.
No. The
Uncle
guy who
Buck?
gets shot. The guy who gets shot in the head in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy who gets shot is he wants to be rich, and he works at like a strip mall. And Jennifer Connelly it's like her first movie, and she's in like a tank top throughout the movie. And she's this weird girl that everybody thinks is loose and crazy, but it turns out she's sweet and manic pixie. And they spend the night in a Target, and criminals try and kill them.
Yeah. What the heck was that called?
Career Opportunities or something like that.
Well, that was only written by him, though. Yeah, it's Career Opportunities.
Yeah. And he did Beethoven movies, and he did Baby's Day Out.
Wow,
And he
okay,
did
so he did a lot more than I
Baby's
ever
Day
thought.
Out.
But keep in mind, okay, if we're talking John Hughes films, we should be talking about, movies that he's directed, not written.
Oh, yeah, this is a little bit different.
Oh. So Curly Sue.
Yeah, written by.
Uncle
not
Buck.
directed by.
He directed both Curly Sue and Uncle Buck. Do not question me on this. He didn't direct The Great Outdoors.
I didn't say that was a movie we should watch.
No one did.
What about Some Kind of Wonderful?
All right. So apparently we're going to watch a lot of John Hughes.
That's coming up in a coming
long
months.
time.
I got some other things that we'll watch
Weird
in
Science?
in late October.
Ooh,
Did he write Weird Science?
No, he didn't. I don't think. Maybe he wrote Weird Science.
I know he directed it.
Yeah, he wrote Weird Science.
Okay.
So, everyone, you have a whole list of movies that we
Fight
just
with
threw
me.
at you that we may or may not be doing on Zach on Film.
Well,
But
I
next
listed-
week,
I
we
listed
definitely
5 of them.
Yeah,
I listed 5 of the great John
Steve
Hughes
listed-
movies that you have not seen. So.
But next week, we are doing, what is it called?
One Crazy Summer,
One
another
Crazy Summer.
Savage Steve Holland movie. In fact, his last,
Love it.
well, he did 3 movies. How I Got Into College was his last movie, but One Crazy Summer. So Better Off Dead shows high school life, even though it's done by a bunch of 30-year-olds, right?
Sure. Look past it.
Yeah. So it's high school life. One Crazy Summer is that time period between graduation, which is probably the funniest scene in the entire movie. I'm not going to spoil it for you. And everything that happens during My Crazy Summer.
All right.
Okay.
I like
so
it.
it's that transition into
Sure.
college,
Good
which
time.
again ties into this theme of transitions that we're doing with directors as we look at
Is it the same time period
Dazed and
that
Confused and Everybody Wants Some.
was an American Graffiti kind of in that time zone after graduation before college?
Yep.
Am I right in that?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
the night before Opie leaves, or not Opie, what's his name?
What's his
leaves
name?
for
Left.
college.
Right. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Hooper.
So, One Crazy Summer.
Mr.
Hooper and Hooper and Opie and Han Solo
Yeah,
are cruising
with Laverne and Shirley
right, and Tony from Taxi.
and what's her face from Three's Company.
Oh, Lord, we are drowning in old
okay.
references.
This is why you need to watch these movies so that you understand these references.
I mean, there was still a lot of them.
Zachary, do you understand that this is why this show exists? Because you haven't been watching the movie.
you will.
Most of those were television shows you just referenced.
Yeah, and
Yeah, but
What's
we
your
don't
point?
watch television on this show.
We
just talk about
could.
Stranger Things.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richie Cunningham, that's TV.
Little Opie Cunningham.
Yeah.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
Han Solo is a movie.
Okay, Han Solo
And
is a movie.
Indiana Jones. Come on.
All right.
Hooper.
You know Three's Company. You know who's
Hooper
Company,
from
right?
Jaws.
3.
You've seen Jaws, right?
You know Three's Company? You know Chrissy from Three's
I know
Company?
the show. I mean,
Okay.
I don't watch it, but
Okay.
it's like it's 2016.
You know Laverne and
I don't watch
Shirley?
it. I know the name. Never watched it.
God dang it, Zach.
Where did they
You know what?
literally raise you?
You should.
in
I literally
a-
watched
well,
almost
But
no
see, here's
television.
the problem.
growing
Here's the
up.
problem. I've had this discussion before. This is the problem why Matthew and I, and a lot of people in our generation get a lot of these references.
Yeah.
Mainly because we were brought up poorly.
Yeah.
And because we were told.
I'll have you know I was well raised by a 32-inch Sylvania television set.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We were raised by the television.
Yeah.
And our television selection was very, very limited, right? So we had either
Right.
movies we could go to or we could watch television, the 3, 4 channels, whatever. We had limited television. And a lot of times to save money, those channels would run reruns from shows that were off the air for already 20 years by the
Sure.
time we watched them. So Gilligan's Island, Laverne and Shirley was still live. But I mean, you look at Brady Bunch, all that stuff. We get to see Tom and Jerry cartoons, Bugs Bunny cartoons, Popeye cartoons, the Max
Good
Fleischer.
times.
Yeah, good times. All that stuff that we get to watch through reruns and syndication growing up, that becomes ingrained in us so that we know these things as we get older. For your generation and other generations too, we see, and I forget what year HBO started, 70-something.
76.
But with the proliferation of cable channels and the micro networks and everything, your attention span is divided to where you really only have time to watch Big Brother, Bachelor, Bachelorette, and whatever.
I mean, that's not what I watch.
Emerald Lagasse's On the Road thing.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah,
you're not are not
The
watching
Simple Life with Paris Hilton.
iCarly.
Yeah, of course.
You are limited in your ability to re-watch television. Whereas in our case, hey, it's Thursday. It's a Thursday night in 1982, and it's the summertime. Well, I guess we're watching a rerun of Cosby Show.
Right. Well, and it's even worse now that I don't have cable because the only reason I've watched all of Seinfeld, which went off air when I was like 8, is because it was on like TBS all the time. You know, and I watched. all of it
so
through
that's
then.
how you know this. So
yeah.
My theory is that people who have a long experience of being part of culture, part of media, and drowning in it like we were as kids, find more enjoyment and get more of the references in The Simpsons than younger kids who have not seen any of that stuff, or don't have a frame of reference for that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's good and it's bad, but my theory is why you haven't seen some of this stuff or why you don't get these references that we're making about American Graffiti. You were never forced to watch Mork and Mindy 50 times the same episode because there was nothing else on.
And I think there's also something to be said about modern sensibilities for showrunners tend to be arc-based things where if you catch a Ted Mosby episode, you know basically where you are in Ted's journey to his wife. When we were kids, the shows were designed to be recycled and not have solid beginning or ending points. And even the ones that had, like, Good Times has a final episode, but it's not a final episode that's like, and here's how we wrap everything up. It's a final episode where they're just like, yep, everybody gets a happy ending. And then tomorrow on TBS, you'll see episode 1.
Oh, but even then it wasn't TBS. It was, well, I guess some people had Superstation, but
WTBS.
It was just turn it on to Channel 41 and there's your Good Times. It's 6:30.
Yep.
And here's WKRP right after that, leading up into your 7 o'clock hour. And, so I think that a lot of this stuff is lost because we have so much that we can be drowning in. I mean, apparently, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, back in the 1800s, early 1800s, you could be a person that could easily read every book that had ever been printed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you can't.
No.
It's impossible. So we have shows like Zach on Film to not only cover, classic films, which you should have seen.
Yeah.
But also these rare gems like Better Off Dead that you must see.
Which is worth everything. It is
Eventually we'll get around to say anything.
one day, but Next week is One Crazy Summer. In the meantime, head over to majorspoilers.com where you can find this podcast posting page, and you can give a answer of, have you ever walked into the shower with your socks on? That'd be great. Let us know if you ever have. And you can also check out all the other great podcasts coming out from Major Spoilers each and every day. While you're there, click on that Amazon.com link where you can buy, the only place you can buy Better Off Dead is Amazon.
Because Hastings is closed.
Hastings is closed, and it's not anywhere online. I will say, we're going to fix that problem, everyone.
Get the Blu-ray version.
But I'm going to get the Blu-ray version. It's not going to cost you any extra when you use that link, but a little bit, we'll come back to Major Spoilers to help keep shows like this going each and every week. Steven, Patreon.
Patreon.com/Major Spoilers if you want to see this show continue and have us get to, potentially years from now, get to my Better Off, whatever it is Matthew was referring to. Then we need to have support. We need to have support from you. Patreon.com/Major Spoilers is how you do it. As much as you want, as little as you want. Everything funnels right back in to the operation of everything that we do at Major Spoilers. Patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Thank you for your support.
All right, Savage Steve Holland next week. See you next week on Zach on Film.
This podcast is copyright 2016 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.